So I love wrapping things up. Really appreciating the opportunity to do this. We don't have a ton of time, so I want to go quickly. There's a nice kind of uniformity that's going on. The last conversation, which was awesome, talking about funding books and/or movies. Interestingly enough, the title of the talk that I'll be giving right after this is called "The Song That Owns Itself," and as Jonathan sort of alluded, there's oftentimes this kind of precursor on music. I'm not sure, I have theories on why that is, but dominantly I just think it's, music's really pervasive, right? And, we're all suffering through this kind of crypto winter and we're all true believers, but one thing I know for sure, I'm not sure what the price of crypto will be 6 months from now or 6 years or 60 years from now, but I know music will still be important. And so I'm really honored to be on this panel of fellow kind of believers in the power of technology and art and the way it comes together. So I'll let each of you introduce yourself quickly and then we'll kind of get into it. Mike?
Hey, I'm Mike Troiano. I'm fascinated by the idea of an Ivy Leaguer who goes nowhere. I'm gonna own that, no. So I was an ad guy for a long time. I worked on a bunch of brands in New York, Coke and GM and AT&T, and really was a sort of ad man. Left to start some companies, became an entrepreneur, raised some money, had some good outcomes, and eventually got invited over to the investing side. So I am a venture capitalist today at a firm called G20, and we're very focused on Web3 and helping bring about a lot of the change that's been described over the course of the day. I'm Mike Trapp on Twitter if anyone wants to reach out.
Hey, I'm Will Griggs. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at HIFI, which is the financial rights organization for the music industry. And we spend our time every day working to make the financial side of the industry work better for artists and those who support artists. And increasingly, we're working as an Oracle partner to track off-chain revenue as it relates to on-chain experiences for musicians, artists, and their fans. And in my other time, I also help with events and membership with a social membership DAO called FWB.
And hello, my name is Nicole Davies. I am not Todd Cooper. I don't know who that is. But I am co-creator at Seed Club. We are a DAO and Web3 accelerator. We help tokenized community projects explore DAOs and the superpowers of tokens. Our alumni include Social Stack Andrew, who was presenting earlier, as well as Pussy Riot, Refraction, Kraus House, Cabin, Colors, and many others.
That's great. And just for context, I'm George Howard. I am a professor at Berklee College of Music. I'm also the arts advisor to Algorand, and I run a investment company called Acme Innovation. Nicole, you and I got to know each other at Berklee, and along with the great Thomas Harjano over there, helped kind of give you all the credit, kind of pushed this open music initiative notion to the forefront, and this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. A lot of the things that we were wrestling with at that time, interoperability of databases, getting artists paid, et cetera, I don't know, have we made any progress? Are we getting anywhere 7 years later from your new seat at the Seed Club?
I mean, I'd like to say yes, because I'm a glass half full type of person. And I think that we're not talking about blockchain anymore, George. So that's one milestone, right? Nobody's saying that word anymore, hopefully.
I just say NFT. Right?
I think the other piece is that we are doing a lot of the experiments that I remember like being in this room and in some rooms nearby, looking at like, okay, if these things weren't a big deal, if payment streams and rights management weren't a big deal, what could we do? And I think what's been amazing is that sort of the Web3 explosion that we're seeing now has let artists and technologists, work directly with each other, or in many cases become one. And so we're seeing experiments like SongCamp, like Refraction, like Catalog come together, or even collaborations like BPM Bot happening in a week, where a bot that plays music in Discord, streaming music from Catalog, providing music discovery for music NFTs, was put together in a week because YouTube pulled the rights from all of the music bots. And so when I see stuff like that, it gives me hope.
Awesome. And Will, you alluded to FWB, which, again, another kind of true believer, Matt Dyhurst and Holly Herndon, they and I were early on trying to, when Ujo was doing the same, all this stuff, and it's wonderful to see so much of their work going. Talk a little bit about, FWB, its values, and why you think that's something worth your time as busy as you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So those who aren't familiar, FWB is a DAO. It is a membership community that is powered by a token, the FWB token. And that token, in different quantities in your wallet, gets you access to different experiences, whether it's 5 tokens that gets you access to events and local experiences. If you were at NFT NYC last week and you had 5 FWB in your wallet, you could have come to Le Poisson Rouge to see Flying Lotus and Toro y Moi DJ, among many other brilliant artists. But also, the DAO, like a lot of these Web3 native communities, was really born out of a hard lockdown moment where social people, curious people, and ambitious people were looking for ways to learn and meet people when you were stuck at home. And it's been an incredible experience for me, coming from much more of a traditional music and live music background, to find ways to bridge the energy between that online, in this case, primarily Discord forward community, and bringing that into physical spaces has been really fascinating. And how you can apply the ethos of decentralization in terms of, gathering feedback, making sure that the decisions aren't being made by one person, but that the experiences that are happening in person are representing the values that were developed when that wasn't even possible.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And Mike, having gotten to know you, one of my favorite things whenever we talk, inevitably, you when we're talking about people or companies or whatever, you say, yeah, well, they've got heart. And I love that about you. And like, I think that gets left out of the equation a lot. From your vantage point as a venture capitalist, but also as this kind of amazing storyteller, how do you find that heart? Is that important as a venture capitalist? It's just this recursive theme for you, and how does that apply to your decision making in this space? Is there more heart in Web3, or is it just the same thing?
Well, I'm on the lookout for, authenticity of conviction, right? So I think that has tremendous predictive value in this space. Like when I'm talking to an entrepreneur, I'm really trying to understand, do they really believe this? Like, are they really in it to do this? Are they really trying to accomplish whatever the mission of the organization is or the project? And I do think that has predictive value when it comes to success, because we're all so desperate for that. Like, I believe that what powers like all innovation and the evolution of all technology and everything else is just fundamental human needs. Lizard brain shit. We want to feel loved and understood and connected to other people. And where you see an inflection point in the arc of technology that helps people do that in a new way, that is an opportunity for disruption. And so, I would say I'm definitely looking for that. And music is sort of the purest expression of that. I'm someone who writes a lot. Music is almost like a shortcut to all that good emotional response. And I have found that so much exciting innovation in this space does come from that very authentic place, to create that human connection on the back of something real, and then find a way to pay for it using something digital.
I think that's the rub, right? I mean, music is undeniably this kind of empathy machine. Art generally, maybe food is the only other thing where two people that are just diametrically opposed values, whatever, can come together. It is that kind of monetization side of things, right? And I think that there's a real blind spot in terms of a lot of people that are in this industry about the actual realities of what it's like to be a working musician. And I personally just kind of can't do the gratuitous, we're going to get, no offense, Diplo or whatever to come play a party. Like that's not getting us anywhere. So, Will, what is HIFI Labs doing to kind of address that what Mike says, the heart, but also the monetary side?
Yeah, so at HIFI, one of our missions is to allow musicians, artists, songwriters, producers, anyone who is developing that art that's going to be generating royalties in the music industry, to give them a holistic viewpoint of their financial situation, how much they're worth, so they have leverage going into negotiations, where their money is coming from, how their strategic decision making impacts their bottom line, which is really, really difficult to do in the music industry in particular. And we put ourselves in a position where we want to have the most holistic viewpoint possible, which, as the Web3 side of the equation continues to grow, and as more artists are experimenting with building revenue outside of the traditional rails of the industry and the label system and the publishers, as that piece of the pie grows, it's important for us to keep pace with that. And also, on the flip side, these Web3 partners for the creators, for the artists, making sure that if there are implications that are fractionalized royalties or any sort of sale or share of the revenue that you're generating from a song that might be streaming on Spotify or a song that might get played on the radio, that you are approaching that from a vantage point of clarity and confidence that you're really delivering that value back to the fans.
Yeah, I'm not sure I get how that happens, but I love the thesis behind it. One of the things that concerns me generally, one of the reasons I'm so happy that Nicole is here is 30 years in the music industry, I've never seen an industry that attracts more kind of Dunning-Kruger problems, right? Where people who are smart in other areas just think they can fix the music industry. How are you, and I find it gross, right? How are you, Nicole, addressing that when you look at kind of Seed Club and as I say, you're a native musician, and so it's great they've got you there, but do you guys see that? That's my greatest fear. I mean, that's what happened to Web 2, right?
Yeah, I think that our main thesis is that by having tokens and having ownership as a superpower within whatever it is that you're building, it just changes the power dynamics and it changes the conversation. And so that's something that we're working really hard on, especially right now as tokens are becoming more and more prevalent. People are excited about issuing NFTs, or people are excited about issuing tokens. And that's great, you can do that, but what does it actually mean? What do the tokens stand for within the community? And so that's something that we're spending a lot of time with, both with our alumni projects as token models evolve and expand, and then also as we continue to bring projects in. And so it's a really interesting conversation, not only with music projects, but sort of across platforms, across industries. People get really excited about issuing a token, but ultimately, what does a successful exit look like for the project that you're building? And is it an exit to community? And does the token represent that? Or is there sort of a sidestepping of the value that the community has created, whether it's the musicians, whether it's the artists, whether it's in media with journalism, whatever it may be, and then the value sort of goes back to these like legacy institutions. And so what we're really focused on is how can we disrupt and change that ownership model? And I think tokens right now are a technological tool that allows that to happen more effortlessly.
Yeah, I love that. An awful lot of confusion around tokens, both from a legal perspective and then certainly as we're going through this down cycle, any business model. Well, I'll pose as a question to you, Mike. I mean, as a venture capitalist right now, 6 months ago, there were a lot of people that were really planning on their token launch and token sale for kind of liquidity. And at this moment, that's trickier. So what does the next 6 months, in your opinion, look like as we kind of row through this time with the space, generally the companies you're working with? I'm not asking you to see the future, but preparing your portfolio companies, what are you telling them right now as they're trying to work through this with respect to tokens, et cetera?
Yeah, it's time to build. A shitty market cleared out all the tourists. And if you're here, you're not here to make a quick buck. You're here for the long run to try and, make the world a little bit better place. And I think you got to focus on that. That great companies are, there are more great companies built in down markets than there are built in great ones. And that's because it's hard. Even under ideal circumstances, it's incredibly difficult to do what a lot of people in this room are trying to do. And so now is the time to be thinking about, how do I build over the long term? How do I build something that is really valuable? And I think you got to focus on value creation before you can focus too much on value capture. Yeah. One of the panelists on an earlier panel was talking about, he likes to see if the token thing is real or if it's a gimmick, and sometimes he'll say, you know, if the tokens went down tomorrow, would that trash the business? And the entrepreneur's inclination is to say, no, we'd be fine. And then his next question is, okay, so why do we need a token? And so I think that, again, the means of like raising money and capturing money and distributing money and like all those things you can figure out, it's really just plumbing in terms of trying to put capital to good use. You know, there needs to be real focus on value creation now and confidence that there'll be a means to capture that value at the appropriate time.
Great. So did you want to chime in there, Nicole, on the value?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's actually such an important aspect. Like, I think having a business model is not a Web 2 thing. It's not a Web 1 thing. It's just it's a thing. And so that's another piece that I think like really gets lost in a lot of these. And I think it's a great note that like, you know, we can have tokens, we can have community, but we are all still sort of fumbling toward a business model, and it's incredibly important.
And I think that, you know, especially with music, we saw a lot of folks jump in thinking there was easy money to be had. And with that out of the equation right now, it really is a question of creativity and what are you doing with this technology that you couldn't do without it? Whether it is experiments that people are you know, playing with in terms of smart contracts, could you include liner notes in a smart contract or Easter eggs for fans? Can you create an experience that otherwise wouldn't be possible because that it is on-chain or because it's through a token? You saw a lot of launches where there was no coattails because the idea was the opportunity and not inspiration.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, in the couple minutes we have left before we talk about this kind of song that owns itself, talk about what's going on in your world. What are you excited about? The same question for each of you all. You know, spread the gospel here on what you're doing. What do you want people to know about?
Yeah, we are part of a deal to bring Napster private and take a venerable brand and hopefully use it as a means to kind of mainstream a lot of the innovation that's happening in the music space. So there's so much cool shit happening in music right now with royalties and with song ownerships and one of ones and one of 500s and like this, it's so exciting. The problem is, in addition to being a fantastic musician, you need a PhD in computer science to be able to use most of it. And one of the things I've been really encouraged by, actually, in my conversations with so many people at the show, is awareness that user experience is a bottleneck on the brave new world of Web3. And that there will be tools rooted in Web 2 and in the set of consumer expectations around Web 2 that will accelerate the development of Web 3 into something that matters in the world. And we think Napster can be part of that, really mainstreaming some of these technologies to let more artists take advantage of the potential that's been created, and that's what we're setting out to do.
Speaking my language. Same question.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, you know, you don't say, George, I'm going to send you an email on the internet. I just say, I'll send you an email. The same way that, you know, right now, so many music fans equate all of Web3 with crypto, or in particular, Bitcoin. And right now, that association for a lot of people might not be positive. But if we can take advantage of the value and the utility of this technology and offer fan experiences and access points to do creative things for the artists that are powered by that technology but not defined by it, that is something that I think we're all excited about.
Yeah, amen, right, yeah. Nicole?
Yeah, I'm going to do a shameless shill. Our accelerator applications open August 1st, so if you have a Web3 project and you're interested in exploring, please check out seedclub.xyz. And if you are wondering if a DAO might be something that you want to join or experiment or understand through participating, we have them across so many verticals. We have a ton of music projects, no idea how that happened, but we also have own a basketball team and, you know, sort of the next Airbnb and many others. And so I think the best way to understand a DAO is to participate in one, and quite frankly, a bear market's a perfect time to do that because it is just the true believers.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to ask you all to step off, though it was wonderful, and ask you to flip the slide up to the song that owns itself. Thank you, panelists, very much. So please hang around, tell your friends. I promise this will be worth it. Yeah, you get a little bit more of me, but thank you. Song that owns itself, I'll go quickly here. So this is a protocol that I developed some time ago. And the core thesis of it is there's just been this kind of misallocation of value creation, right? We create something, and the delta between the creator and the consumer is full of kind of rent seekers in the music business. It might be publishers, publicists, etc. And we've not been able to kind of decide who's actually making the things happen in terms of spreading the word. So I built this technology because I've known forever that the only way that you succeed as an artist or a business person or whatever is through when a friend tells something. But we never kind of quantify that. So I recently came upon this artist by my friend Ralph Jacquetine at Berklee told me about. Her name is Debo Ray. And she's got a new song coming out, and I just heard it, and it blew my mind. She's a Grammy-nominated artist, studied at Handel and Haydn Society, diploma from the conservatory, alumna at Berklee, knows everything you need to know about performing. She was just performing at the Hollywood Bowl, and yet, you know, there's these issues with respect to getting this song out and getting it heard, and I thought to myself, why just talk about this? Why don't we actually play some music? So I invited Debo to come. Where are you? Come on up, Debo.
Yes, you get to play guitar. Really gonna ride into your town. Really gonna throw that jacket down. Really rides roughshod with no shoes. Really gonna leave no further clues. Really was a pretty long time ago. Got put down 'cause you ran too slow. Really wasn't gonna be so defined. Really growing up before your eyes. Really growing up before your eyes. Really gonna dance and mesmerize. Really gonna. Oh, really gonna. Yeah. Really gonna. I feel like I'm around the final turn. Down the stretch, you got speed to burn. I feel like I'm gonna fill you up. Oh, can't be feeling down, that's what's up. Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna fill you up. Can't be feeling down, that's what's up. Really gonna. Fill it up, Jack, got miles to go. Fill it on back down now, don't you know? Oh. Feel it gonna keep you up all night. Oh, feel it gonna look for one more bite. Yes. Feel it gonna look for one more bite. Feel got a great big appetite. day. Oh, feel it coming. I feel it going. Ooh, hey. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you, George.
Stay up here for that. So, so we both had shows this weekend.
Yes.
And where did you play?
I played at the Hollywood Bowl.
I played at the West Medford Porch Festival. And a gig's a gig, right?
Gig is a gig, yes.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
My soul just swells. Like, you know what I mean? Like getting ready for this and doing this thing. We've done it so many times. You've done it so many times, but when you put the two together, like, it's different. It changes the energy. It changes the molecules. But talk a little bit about, releasing this song, what it's like to be a working musician right now.
Right. Well, I've always been told, put it out as quickly as possible. You have to get your music to the masses in as easy a way as possible. So I just went through a quick online distributor, and they distributed it basically on Spotify, and that's where it's at.
That's the plan. And all this wonderful talk about Web3 and crypto and all that stuff.
I know nothing about it. I would love to know more, though.
And in your world, I mean, you're surrounded by musicians and you see them every day. That's your milieu. What percentage of your friends, of which you know many of them, know as much or more than you or less? I mean, how many know anything?
Honestly, none.
Hey, everyone, we're in a fucking echo chamber, right? Have I made my point? So what do we do?
Well, I guess just reaching out to musicians and seeing how this can happen, how we can connect technology with what I'm doing.
And maybe it'd be good to have artists having a seat at the table and a part of these conversations rather than talking about artists like they're cogs in some machine
yes.
that we can build a creative value upon and then do tokens and go public.
Yes, that would be great.
All right. Thank you so much. Can you put the slides back up? I promise I'll be done in a second. It's really hard to follow that. Okay. So dancing about architecture. Nobody knows who said that, David Byrne or whatever, but talking about music is like dancing about architecture, so Debo Ray made it make sense. So quantifying has been hard to track, right? I'm sorry? Oh, you guys are just talking. So right now, Debo just songed her original composition, Philly, at MIT, which undoubtedly pays a performance royalty. Even though this venue is paying ASCAP and BMI for the license to publicly perform Debo's, I am a copyright lawyer, Debo's and everyone else's work, when it's played, she's getting nothing, zero, absolutely zero. Is that right? Does that seem right to everyone? Right? When Philly is played on the radio, none of the performers. Now, there's a wonderful track. I encourage all of you all to go to your music streaming service of choice, hopefully Napster, and listen to Debo's song. And if you request it on the radio, et cetera, the problem is Spotify, all the others, they don't pay every time a song is played. They don't pay a fractional percentage to the artist. They do it on a modeled metric, right? Debo will get nothing. Chris fucking Martin from Coldplay will get Debo's money, 100%. Right? So when we hear about like trying to get the music into the right people's hands, the money for the music in the right people's hands, it is not happening at any level whatsoever. When you listen to Debo's beautiful track, you will hear vastly better musicians than I am, right? And engineers and producers and everyone else. The way our copyright and record label systems work right now is once they get paid a fee, they never get any revenue in the form of royalties going forward, right? It's insane. When an event organizer, such as the great John Werner, facilitates the awareness building of Debo and Philly, there's direct value creation. Some of you all really loved what Debo did. It's probably some Pareto principle, right? Some of you all will tell your friends about this. You will be compensated not at all for that. And yet you are the key marketers for this. You get the point. So I created this thing called Stowe, pronounced Stowe-E. Many years ago, I think Thomas was there, in 2014 or 15, I presented a talk called The Car That Owns Itself. I don't really care about cars, right? So I started thinking about music, and we've done a bunch of these. I had the great honor at South by Southwest to do a talk like this with the great Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC. He did a song that owns itself. And just like the brilliant writer who wrote about those twins, talking about doing his book that way, that's a Stowie. What he described, having that screenplay owned by community, this exists right now. I don't know if he's still here, but he can avail himself of this technology to fund his, it's a micro DAO, right? It exists, it works, it runs on the Algorand blockchain. The creator allocates a percentage of their copyright to a DAO, and then based on the gestures that give the song what it wants, the DAO issues tokens called Stowies. Where it gets interesting as things go more and more on chain. We'll be able to see it, right? So somebody tweets out about something, that's net promoting. You'll be able to hashtag that, we scroll it, you give it a token, right? And we all know what the token communities are. What this is about is net promoter score. It's about actually quantifying the value of the fans. I promise you, 30 years in the music business, it's not the labels, it's not the publishers, it's not the publicists, it's none of that. It's the fans, right? So Stowie begins the recalibration. Artists who expose others' work should be rewarded by the original song, depending on how much value they create. Alternatively, the song should be able to preclude those who will do harm from being able to cover it. So every one of you has been to a sporting event in which a song comes on, you don't know the name of it, and you don't know who wrote it. It goes, na, 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 hey, right? So the author of that song is a convicted child molester, right? And yet, every time Rock and Roll by Gary Glitter gets played in a stadium, and it does every time, money is funneled back to his estate. Now, arguably, he's not able to get at that money, whatever. But artists don't have the ability to control where their music is used. We all remember the kerfuffles about music being played at campaign rallies. We don't need to do that anymore, right? But we've got to be able to see the ways in which the music is being used and put the power back in the hands of the artist and say, I'd rather not have my music used in that way, but when it is used, I want to be compensated. If Philly were a Stowie, it would issue tokens who heard this event right now. Every one of you all would go to your wallet or whatever, and you'd be airdropped a token, right? Then you could be part of the community, you could do certain actions, get more of them, and then eventually Debo is able to identify her most passionate fans and spread the word. So where we are today, the white paper, I created it with a guy named Aubrey Anderson from a company called New Computer Corporation. Algorand gave us a grant to port it from ETH to Algo. We did a song called God Particle, which is the glitch mob. Then we did another one by this young artist named Jesse Doikens. Then we just did the one with DMC. We're moving towards a self-service model. Like I see Stowie as sort of being the way that, that automatic WordPress is, where we'll have a sliver that'll be for-profit and most of it'll just be open source. I'm an educator, right? Like I want that moment in time when someone's about to launch a Stowie to have a little pop-up that goes, hey, do you know what copyright is, right? Because most artists don't, and this gives us a time to kind of educate right in time. As a integration into other emerging Web3 tools, right? It's obvious. That's our biggest challenge, right? As an industry, as an ecosystem, is interoperability. Nicole and I, and I'm sure many of you others, were at the early days of blockchain, and I just remember screaming interoperability, and we're feeling the pains of the lack of that right now. We've got to fix that. Luckily, people like Chris Swinner are addressing that. And then, you know, an expansion into other media, shows that own themselves, collisions between musicians and visual artists creating works and being able to fractionalize. And then an ongoing commitment to artists having a seat at the table of creation. I am doing my very best not to do, I do too many talks as it is. I'm not doing any more without artists in the room. And I challenge all of you all to kind of have that same spirit here. It'll be better for all of us. Anyway, thanks. This is where you can find me. Thank you, John, and everybody else. Thank you, Debo.